time around.
Okay.
It's too depressing, to be honest with you, to see
What?
all the. Well,
I mean,
the first
like,
time around was depressing to see all uh, uh, the poor surrounding that these people were living in.
sure, 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 sure.
Yeah, but
That,
then, but this time I had a different uh, 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 concept of what to look for. And, yeah, and that obviously made a big difference. So essentially, all the poor people really never registered with me because I was looking for something else. Isn't that amazing? Same movie.
Yeah.
so you know what? That's a great explanation. So Rasul, please explain a little bit more, and I'll probably ask some questions. So first of all, was any of the stuff that I was emphasizing on, I'm just trying to validate how perhaps I'm wrong sometimes on my takes, but did that make sense?
Yeah, I mean, hi there, good evening.
Right.
Yeah.
So did it make sense?
As though the thing was written for him at that time.
Okay. Very good.
Yeah.
Did we, I mean, as you were going through this, did it make sense to look at the relationship between the heart and the mind?
Oh yeah.
Okay.
Oh yeah.
But
Oh, yeah.
I want you to give me some examples, please.
Don't do that because I don't have good memory of the specifics.
Just give me general, and I'll help you with it.
Like when they show flashbacks of the things that was happening to him.
Of course.
And then of course when it was happening, he would have no idea why they were happening, and he would be upset at things that was happening. But then when the question come up, that thing will flash back right in front of him and say, "Oh yeah, I know that. That was written for me."
So, for instance, the way he knew what Benjamin Franklin was. I mean, what
Right.
was the president who was on $100 bill, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
That experience of, when he saw his old friend, and his old friend told him, "Yeah, this is $100 bill because it's Benjamin Franklin." So that
Yeah.
registered, right?
Yeah.
Good. And so this is all fake, of course.
Yeah.
What about the time that it was the Ricky Pontaine and Jack Hops? You remember that question?
Yeah.
Okay. And the guy supposedly gave him the answer in the bathroom, right?
Yeah.
And he didn't take that.
He didn't take it. No, he went back. That's right. He went back to his own.
So what was that? How do you explain that part?
That was meant to be the way that it doesn't matter what the human intervenes. What is meant is meant. It's going to happen.
So I looked at it as what his gut feeling was. He went with that.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So his gut was telling him that, nope, this guy is not telling me the truth. As a matter of fact, that whole question, if you remember, used the audience first, right? So he got a 50-50.
50-50, yeah.
Yeah. So then, now he had two choices. And what he knew, his gut was telling him that somehow he could not trust this guy.
Yeah.
Although the guy seemed pretty sincere.
Yeah, he gave. That's right. He
So, and then the last question, of course, the third musketeer. It was part of his destiny as it was coming through.
Yep.
However, he just part of his destiny was that he was beaten by the book by the teacher, right? The teacher actually, beat him in the head.
That's right.
Right.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
he never got to know the third musketeer. And that, I think, is where it was written is something that, you know, went into effect right there. That he's like, yep, A, and he took A, and of course, then, you know, it was the right answer, and everything came together.
Yeah.
You're right. This was, you know, of course, if you look at it from the perspective of, you know, the sad, you know, areas of how the how the society in that time, I mean, the transformation of, you know, Bombay to Mumbai and all that, and how, you know, they actually modernized that city right now. I mean, it's a completely different thing. But yeah, it's, you know, those areas are some facts of life. But I think from the heart of it, there was a lot of, yeah, there were some good messages. All right.
Oh yeah, I mean, when it first came out, it was really too gut-wrenching for me to watch it, so I never finished watching it way back when it first came out.
Right.
But like I said, this time I had a different mission.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I think yeah, I'm just a movie buff. I mean, I just watch anything, just so therefore I'll go. I went with it. But all right, I'm glad you saw it. Let's just go over what we talked about last time, if you would, real quick. I think we went through the stories of you know, how the that Wazir basically kind of got all the followers to believe that he was going through some sort of a cleansing. He told them that he's not going to appear before them anymore. He put them in such a position that, you know, they felt that they were not worthy of seeing him any longer. So and they kept on, you know, becoming more and more you know, eager to somehow see him, and of course he refused. And then what he you know, there are a couple of areas where, you know, we talked about some of the lessons that you know, Rumi is giving us, and that is basically the whole notion of choice versus destiny, and the fact that we do have choices in this life. However, our destiny is also something that has been, it's or fate, or I mean, we're gonna have a better word for jabr somehow, but what is the fate is something that it can never be changed, and so forth. I think we went through these lines, as Rumi was saying: when we fire arrows, don't give us the blame. We're just a bow. It's God who's taking aim. And if you remember, I mentioned that that was the whole, you know, the ayah about Prophet Muhammad taking aim at people, or the folks that he was uh, who he was fighting with, and I just actually I went and downloaded this nice application which works on my desktop, which I can now do this for you guys, which is really nice. If this works, then I'm going to be golden. Yep. All right. So this is the ayah that we were talking about, which in here, if I think you guys can see this, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So it's not, it is not Yehu slew them. It was Allah. That's what this thing says. When thou throw west a handful of dust, it was not thy act, but Allah's, in order that he might test the believers by the gracious trial from himself. So the text itself says, "Falam taqtuluhum walakin Allah qatalu wa ma ramaita iz ramaita." This is the area. This is the text. The ma ramaita iz ramaita is something that in the Farsi version, Rumi keeps on basically, bring it up and talks about it the most. So in here, he also refers to that. And what he says is that, yes, it's something that, happens, and this is something that you do, but at the same time, it's God's will, and God's will only, that actually makes things happen for you. And then he further on goes to make sure that nobody goes away from the notion of trying to say that we don't have choices in life, which he says, if we're not free to choose, then why we feel shame, express regret and grief, and take the blame. And why should students strive and teachers guide? Why does the mind shove fate's decree aside? And so basically he's trying to tell us that we have to still do what we got to do in our life. We have to still thrive to actually achieve what we need to achieve. However, we need to trust in God that what needs to happen is going to happen for us, which is a pretty simple concept to say it. And perhaps some of us have been hearing this a lot, or we have even been saying it and all that, but believing it is something completely different. I mean, when we're talking about believing in this, it is a very fundamental restructuring of thought process. And another thing that we also talked about is that, Rumi came back and said, unfortunately, men, or in just general, it's human beings, in every act in which you're satisfied, you give yourself the credit with such pride, but when your actions make you blush with shame, you say, he forced me, God's the one to blame. So that's how we use these things, and that's not how we're supposed to use it. We have to make sure that in every action, every act that this thing emerges and shows up, we do submit and agree that what has happened was the will of God, and we just basically thrived and tried our best to achieve what we wanted to achieve, and whatever at the end happened, it was something that was meant to be. This is how we're supposed to at least use that expression, if we're going to use the expression. So eventually the vizier goes and kills himself. And once he kills himself, of course, what happens is the fact that what he wanted to eventually happen did happen. And that was the fact that these 12 different tribes of Christians who originally were being killed by the Jewish king, now those guys are coming back and killing themselves, because every single one of them came up, told his people and the rest of the people that, hey, yeah, I do have a scroll in my hand, and I do have, I was told that I'm the next leader, and so forth. And naturally, this just caused chaos and eventually just put everybody into a very, very bloody fight. And now, if you remember at the end, when Rumi is trying to say that, what happened with these people, and why is it that they actually, he comes and tries to tell us that the ones who died were people who could not see well. Eventually, they could not even understand and grasp the full meaning of what Christ had brought to them, and what it meant to be a Christian. And the fact that, Christianity and Judaism are not two different things. And the same thing with Islam. They are not different from each other. They're all part of one source. And therefore, if, you see them as two different things, it is a problem of you not seeing well. And therefore, he then starts to tell us that, hey, why don't you try to, in this case, try to be a little bit more diligent with respect to what you look for. Try to start looking into, he uses the example of pomegranate, if you remember. Buy pomegranates that the grocer splits so that its mouth will show the seeds in it. for generous laughter shows us openly the heart a pearl within the spirit sea. So I think what we need to get out of this is the fact that there are certain things for us that once we are approached with them, or we are shown what is out there, sometimes we don't feel right about it. If we don't feel right about it, then we don't feel right. I mean, it is what it is. And we have to start trusting our heart and the messages that the heart is trying to give us. If we don't trust that, and he's now kind of slowly trying to give us signs that, yeah, if a pomegranate is, completely, fully grown and sweet inside, you will see that laughter in it. And eventually when you open it up, you still will see the nice, seeds in there. But and that's just like all human beings as well. So your first impression, or your initial impression of them, and how that impression make you feel, is something to count on. Perhaps it may not be the deciding factor, but you need to weigh on that and trust your gut, which eventually will hopefully show up in different ways and manifest itself into the right meanings. And then at the end, he says, your heart will lead you to the mystic way. Your body drags you to its cell of clay. So that's why he's now trying to tell us to start working with your heart. Try to start trusting your heart a little bit more, because we need to start familiarizing ourselves with this element that we have, which is our GPS, which is going to eventually, we're going to have to allow the heart to give us the right signals. So it's like, this is what the heart will do. It will lead you to the mystic way. And body, in this case, the reason he's using the body is because the body brings us a lot of needs, and the needs that the body brings us will always drag us. It will always make us do different things that we may not be comfortable with, or things that may not be comfortable for us, in a sense. I mean, it is just the way it is. So give your heart food from those in accord. Seek fortune from the ones who know their Lord. And in this case, now he's like, find people who are, at the same wavelength, or at the same frequency of the heart with your heart, and work with them, or talk to them, or try to actually gather with them in such a way that, again, your heart starts kind of exercising, finding out people who are on the same wavelength with you. And now he says, seek fortune from those who know their Lord, because, somebody who has gone through this path, it's important for us to seek them and find out how they went through this path. So, and I think last time, another thing that we talked about, and I showed you guys, was the fact that Rumi believes that our mind is only there to show us part of the way. And we read a passage from, I think it's, line 2000 something, we went ahead and read that just because of the fact that, that line is so telling about what he feels about the mind, that it shows us a little bit of the way. But eventually we need to get rid of the mind, because it's something that we use in order to fight with each other. It's our minds and our egos which engage, and they actually make us, look at differences. And once we look at differences, it's hard for us to work through our heart. So that was a quick summary. Any comments? All right. So the next section, he does make a quick pause to give us a interesting insight into the mention of Prophet Muhammad in the Gospels. And that means that and this is a true fact in both Torah and Bible. Thank you. The Prophet Muhammad has been mentioned. I think the true Torahs do have the right verses in them. There has been certain things that have been changed, I believe, in the Torah, which it is what it is. I mean, we can't. I mean, I don't want to get into that. But even in the Bible, it's about how Prophet Muhammad has been mentioned as the prophet will come in the future. There was and Rumi actually goes into a pretty great detail into it. Let's just read that. So inside the gospel was Muhammad's name, the soul of prophecy who's free from blame. Accounts of his appearance is contained. His battles, fasts, and diet it explained. So what Rumi is trying to say in this case, and when it comes to diet, I don't think if diet is the right word, but he's trying to say that there were details given. There was a lot of details given to about Prophet Muhammad, so that he wouldn't be mistaken for somebody else. Let's put it this way. A Christian sect, for their own benefit, on reading his most glorious name in it, would kiss the text and raise it to their head, respecting what the Holy Gospel said. And I'm not quite sure which, I don't know if it's Catholicism or if it's Protestant that he's talking about in this case. I don't know, unfortunately. But it's one of these sects that actually has a much more direct way of referring to Prophet Muhammad. In all
I don't think any of those sects were at that time. Those are, started with Protestant in England not too many centuries ago.
So you mean it wasn't around when Rumi was saying?
I don't think all these sects were around those days, no. But okay. I do not know exactly, but most of them happened in the last 500-600 years, starting from Protestant England, I think.
So that Paul is, Paul who actually started Protestant. Basically, Protestant is something that comes from, Paul, who was one of the 12 apostles, and his story is quite interesting. I mean, I've heard this again, that how he emerges after Jesus disappears, or Jesus goes to the heavens. The way he emerges and the way he actually gives himself and kind of gives his accord of what Jesus wanted. I think that was something that has been around quite some.
I think Mr. Mohsen, Mr. Other Mohsen, not our teacher, leader, but the long time student of yours is correct, because and I just looked it up, but I think Protestantism was started by Martin Luther. Am I wrong?
Martin Luther,
Martin Luther, yeah.
And I think it was after Rumi, like I want to say after the 1500s maybe.
So, all right. Like I said, I'm not, I did not research this too well. So therefore it's again, but then the question that I'm going to have for myself is like, what is it that was descended from Paul, which eventually, so I have to just, I guess, go back and read up on that.
I do not know the answer, but just go back to Shiism. Shiism hasn't started with Hazrat Ali. After generation, the people, start making up and separated the religion. So none of the imams per se said, you have to be separated, and we are Shia and they are not Shia. So this is all
Yeah,
man-made
Shiism,
after that fact.
of course, was part of Al Bouye. Basically, those are the guys who actually just basically highlighted Shiism.
Yes.
As a matter of fact, they are the ones who even orchestrated, for instance, the um, death of Imam Hussein and all that stuff too. I mean, as far as how that was put together and so forth. But yeah, okay, let's go forward. Um, so in all this latest strife, that group were saved from terror for the good way they behaved. So in this case, Rumi is referring to them. And this is why I got to go now and research this. Apparently, there is one specific sect that he's referring to, which this is not quite a true story, but there's some truth into this story. And he's saying that those were the ones who actually were saved because, they stuck to the truth, and the truth that was, passed to them through, generations after generations from Christ. And from the evil of that sly vizier, protected by his name, they held dear. Their offspring flourished. A fortune didn't end. Muhammad's light became their helpful friend. The other Christian groups made no attempt. They held the name Muhammad in contempt. So they met shame and suffering to serve from seeds of evil sown by that vizier. Their faith was tempered. Their faith was tampered with. It's not the same. Those false, misleading scrolls are all to blame. From Ahmed's name, you can gain such support. His light gives help of a much higher sort.
Hussein,
Yes.
this notion of tampered is essentially what non-Muslims pick up to tell us that we're selective in saying that Prophet Muhammad was mentioned in Bible. Because on one hand, you say that this book is not valid because it's been tampered with, but then you turn around and say now it's good because his Prophet Muhammad is mentioned in it.
That's true. And again, like I said, I've made a note for myself to actually look up, the the history of Paul himself, because it's Paul which eventually he is the first one who actually brings a different version.
Isn't Paul kind of, sorry to cut you off, if I remember Catholics ever so slightly, kind of like in a way helped kind of parallel with Jesus bring like Christianity out of Judaism, or am I wrong?
So I think he emerged after Jesus.
Right, but I think I'll have to look it up. This was many years.
Again, we're gonna.
You had a big influence on that, on bringing Christianity out of Judaism.
Right.
Do you know what I mean?
Right. I mean, that was definitely a struggle at that time, for sure. That, how to actually emerge from Judaism and establish Christianity. You're absolutely correct. Okay, so.
And I think Paul was Jesus Christ after Jesus. I think Paul was the second most integral person in that achievement.
He is, but and I say that because I sat through a talk, and I have to now go back and find the talk, which actually illustrated what happened with him. There were a series of things that he did. Eventually, he not only he had to establish himself, and he established himself. He exaggerated on certain levels about who he is. That definitely did occur. So
okay.
We'll get to that for sure. So his name's a fort that foes can't penetrate. Imagine then his truthful spirit state. And that's, he's talking about Prophet Muhammad. There is a reason he brings this here, as we will eventually, in about 500 lines, we're going to get to this as well. He talks about, he's trying to establish that there are these humans who are complete souls. And there is a specific characteristics about them. I mean, a complete soul from a human perspective is somebody who has gone through a lot of hardship in order to achieve that level of greatness and that level of closeness to its source or to the beloved. For instance, 2 weeks ago in the Farsi class, there is a hadith by Prophet Muhammad which says that Joseph was very beautiful, but I am a salty version of him, or I'm saltier than him. And salty literally means, in this case, somebody who's been dipped in salt. And the reason he says that is because what he's trying to say, he's trying to refer to the purity that anything that you actually put or dip into salt would bring certain level of purity, about itself. And he's saying that I've been dipped into salt more than Joseph himself. And of course, when you look at the life of Joseph and the life of Prophet Muhammad, probably Prophet Muhammad had a little bit more hardship than Joseph did in this case, because Joseph eventually lived as the king of Egypt, and his life also ends with a love story rather than a sad story, or not a sad story, but in this case, he basically got to kind of settle down in a sense. Anyways. The next story is the story of another Jewish king who tried to destroy the religion of Jesus. Now, why does Rumi keeps bringing this at this state of Masnavi? And the reason is that he's trying to establish sincerely and with a very, very determined mind that, hey, you have to look at things the way they are and don't be fooled by the nature of what is being told to you. You are the one who actually have to look and start having a faith within yourself and start examining things as they come your way. So in this case, he says, after this bloodshed with no remedy caused by that sly vizier's sheer cruelty, another king descending from that Jew attempted to destroy the Christians too. If you desire to learn of this attack, recite by heaven and its zodiac. Now, in this case, what he's referring to is the surah of I think it's hold on. I think he's referring to surah
85.
Is it 85?
Yes.
Okay. Yeah, you're right. Sorry. Okay, 85 and Fatar. And I think it's no, sorry. I think it's 85. You're right. And he's talking about he wants to, so basically this is what he's referring to real quick. It's this Surah Buruj. And it says, by the sky displaying the zodiac signs, Wasama Izatul Buruj, by the promised day of judgment, and by one, and in this case, these are, God basically is given an oath in a sense, with by using the sky and the zodiacs in it, or the promise of the judgment day, and all that. And Rumi is also referring to this. Here is one thing that just real quick. Rumi does refer to zodiac signs a lot. He does believe in astronomy. He does believe in the energy that comes from the stars to us. He does believe in that. So we're going to read much more about them as they come about. But in this case, what he says is that if you desire to learn, of how this thing actually came about, why don't you go and try to find out about the zodiac sign that these guys, basically attracted towards themselves. The former king's bad precedent by fate, this other king now tried to imitate. So basically, one bad precedent is now being followed by another person, which is unable to see God in its image as it's been manifested in this earth. Those who established evil customs still receive each hour a curse which makes them ill. Now, in this case, he's kind of referring to karma, in a sense that, if you establish an evil custom, or if you actually teach an evil custom, or you actually bring about something evil to people, this curse or this bad omen would circle back, and it will come back to you. While habits of the good don't fade away from wicked men, oppressions, what will stay? So in this case, is that the good men are the ones who tell us what they want to say in good sense, and the unfortunate thing is that the darkness and the evil is something that sticks around. And that's a true statement as well. So if we even look at history, and if we look at everything that when it comes down to human history and so forth, I mean, going back, several, centuries, uh, evil and darkness and fights and wars and all that, it's been all around. And it's really, the only thing is that there have been people who eventually have found that there is a different way that they could actually live, or they could approach all of this, and they have kind of tried to learn that way and teach others, and eventually emerged as scholars, or folks who are connected souls. And that's what he's saying in here, that while habits of good don't fade away, they don't fade away, but it's the problem is they don't stick around, because good habits needs good intentions and good eyes. And the problem is that our intentions are always diluted by our ego and mind. Our ego and mind is constantly forcing us to make bad decisions, or make decisions which may not be in the right path. So he says, until the end of time, this latter kind towards their fellow triants are inclined. So, whoever is of the bad kind, or of, a wicked men, they will be, they will be following that, up until the end of time. It's just that, generation after generation, this thing will be that of that kind, or of that type of follower. In parallel, vines different waters past, and they'll continue till the trumpet blast. Now, what he's saying is that the good and the bad will always be in this world together, and they're going to be in parallel. It's just that you can never get rid of evil and you can never get rid of the good. It's just that they're always going to be together. The fact of the matter is, though, the reason people go towards evil more than they go towards the good is because evil is something that caters to our ego. And our ego is something that we completely and fully feel it within ourselves. Our ego tells us that you're right now. I mean, our ego and the good and and everything else that comes with it, or nafs, is something that keeps us healthy at the same time, keeps our body healthy, keeps our us fed, makes us thrive to actually earn more money. That's our ego. That's our ego driven actions. So we need the ego, and we've talked about this before. The only thing is that as we need the ego, it also can become a runaway train too, that towards this triumph to get more and more and achieve more and more, we can just destroy everything else that comes our way. So,
Mohsen, may I interrupt you?
sure.
So you just said the ego, right? Except I remember you had also said Rumi. I mean, I think different scholars believe differently about the ego. Some say you can tame the ego, and like you said, you need a certain amount of ego, but in a controlled, tamed way. But you were saying Rumi wanted to get rid of ego completely, right?
Yeah, I was bringing. I think what you're referring to one, because in the Farsi class, I have a gentleman who has studied this a lot, and what he says is that you can never get rid of the ego. You have to tame it.
Right.
So that, and of course, I'm not disagreeing with what he says. Where my point of view comes from is the point of view of that I have read in the Masnavi. And in the
Right.
Masnavi, Rumi is very unkind to the ego, extremely unkind. I mean, he wants to cut his head off. And he says that you've got to tie him up and put him aside. He even says if your ego tells you to pray, don't pray. Do everything that he says in the opposite direction, because it's not serving you, it's serving himself. And in this case, it's the self which takes you away from your origin. So it's the self that gets you all, all tangled up in what you need in this world, and it completely shuts out your heart and soul. Okay.
Thank you.
Mohsen,
Yeah.
I think my understanding of this, that he fights the ego, is essentially boils down to this. My estimation, my summary. I hope I'm right. If not, then you certainly all can correct. That to know God is to know yourself. And Shams essentially helped him to know himself, Rumi. And for that reason, he tried to fight the ego. That way he can get to know himself and don't have these other sources interfere with him knowing himself. That's why.
Okay. Awesome. So I would add something to this, and you're absolutely right. So you're right. In Farsi, the self is the khud, right? And basically, in order to know self, that means then eventually khud is the word khuda, which is God, is a derivation of khud. Therefore, that's us basically looking inwards into ourselves, and we would find the reflection of God there, right? Which is not a wrong statement.
I never made that connection. Yeah, you're right. Khud and khuda, it's like the root. Oh, wow. Okay.
That's right. And then I'll go a step further. So when you're talking about ikhtiyar. So in order for you to actually have choice, there must be a khud, or there must be a self, so that it can actually allow you to make the choice. So khud, khuda, and ikhtiyar, all of them have got within them the root of it is khud, which is self, right? Now, Rumi is not disagreeing with any of this so far. The issue is this: when we're born, there are four elements in us immediately, which is, you start developing a mind, and you start, with the untamed and untrained self or ego, and then you have a heart and a mind and a soul. And the problem is that they start teaming up with each other immediately. And the reason they team up with each other, because it is all about the survival of this body, this thing that we carry. And in order for this thing to, we get cold, we get hot, we get hungry, we get thirsty, we have desires, we want things and all that stuff. So it's all of a sudden, we just start kind of taming whatever this body wants, which that's exactly where now his problem starts. This is where Rumi kind of draws the line that, wait a minute, what about these other two? What happened with these two? Why are you not paying attention to them? And most of the time we are like, oh, we'll pay attention to it when we get to it. When we get to it. We always say that. As a matter of fact, look at the number of people around you who are even interested to like explore Rumi in a different way. Just look at it. You can probably have a cup of tea in a dinner and talk about it, but certain people only want to hear it at that level. That's it. After that, it is what it is, and so forth. Funny part is, human beings, the older they get, all of a sudden, the more they kind of have a desire that, wait a second, we probably should have learned this, or we should have been a little bit more accustomed to these stuff. So therefore, they now start reading more, and they start joining these things, and so on and so forth.
That's the reason that I'm here.
Oh, that's not what I meant. But that's the deal. It's us. All of a sudden, we're realizing that, wait a second, there was something else here, and we neglected it. And the reason we neglect it is because our desire of the self that is a driven self, is so much, which is like, you don't have time right now, you can't do this, it's, how could you commit to it, it doesn't make sense right now, we have problems, we have this, we have that. It is that level of authority that it has over us, which then gets us to not be kind of to get connected. Now, Rumi, the part when he then talks about this self, he realizes that we need it. He realizes that, and he even admitted it. We read this last week easily. I mean, the thing about the cane and all that, we read it. That he says, yeah, you need this in order to walk a little bit. But once you learn how to walk, you got to put this away. But the problem is we don't put it away. And according to Rumi, we take it and we start beating each other with it. Because now it's all about whether I'm right or wrong, which is, again, the wrong self emerging. And it says, all right, now I'm, let's make sure the other person knows that they're wrong. Let's go after him. Let's make him feel bad. Let's make him feel inadequate and all that stuff. So in all, but another thing, so since we were talking about this, just notice that he says, in parallel, vines different waters past, and they'll continue until the trumpets a trumpet blast. Trumpet blast is referring to, in religious terms, Surah Esrafil, which,
End of times, yeah.
what do you call that, Angel, in English? Esrafil.
Israel?
Israel is the one that brings death. Gabriel is the one that brought, brings the messages and all that. And then there is,
What is it? The end of times? Like
yes,
when we're all being recalled
yes,
below. I'm not
yeah.
sure what the angels
So
are.
they call him Esrafil in Farsi, but I forgot what they call it in. So he's talking about the fact that this good and evil is going to be there. Why is it that they're going to be there? Well, because if you remember, we read about this, that this whole world is based on opposites. The opposites are always going to exist. Through the opposites, we find this, the emergent, light of God. We just find God in the emergence of the opposites. And that's how, that's why it just needs to be there. You have to have the good and the evil. As a matter of fact, in book 5, he actually has a good thing. He's like, unless you have something that's fake, you never know what is the true merchandise. It's like, you have to have the fake. And the people who know what the true merchandise is, they'll take the right one. And the ones who take the fake, not necessarily they, came out to actually buy a fake thing. Although these days is different, they go buy purses, for $10 and all that. I mean, there's a lot of stuff that actually changed ever since Rumi was saying these stuff. But again, it's like, it has to be there. The opposites need to be there so that we can make a better decision and choose better path for our lives. So then
before you leave this, I want to make a comment on this different waters in different veins. I don't envy the translator's difficulty in from Persian to this English, because what he translated here really doesn't convey what the Farsi is.
No.
Because in there he's talking about the salt and the sweet water that they never mix, and it's going to stay like that until the day after.
Yeah, and remember in the Farsi one, it says, because in all veins, there was salt and sweet, they go parallel. Right. Now in the, that's why he's bringing the word vein in here.
Yeah.
Whereas, it's really difficult to actually, get these things in the right translation.
Like I said, I don't envy his position because it's not easy, but
yeah.
Oh yeah.
And it is very funny. I was searching about Israfil, what is in English. It doesn't have any name. Just it says in English, angel who blows the trumpet on the resurrection day. So there's absolutely no one word.
All right, that's good. All right, so then now he's talking about, so Sweetwater reaches good men in the end. And what is it? The good, to the good, the book we send. Now, again, I think this one is another ayah from Quran, which in this case, I think it's Surah Baqarah. I have a feeling, if I'm not mistaken. Let me just...
No. 35.
35?
Yes.
And yes. Okay. Yeah.
35, 32.
That's correct. Thank you. So it says, in this case, it says, Summa awrasna kitab al-lazina. And then, then we have given the book of inheritance to such of our servants as we have chosen. That's what he's referring to in this case, that, the Sweetwater reaches good men at the end. What is it? The good, to the good, the book we send. So what he's trying to say is that the right words and the right guidelines are always sent for those who are seeking them. And the good men here are the people who are seeking these type of guidelines, and they want to actually make sure that they are, benchmarking themselves towards, the right path with them. Now, he's going forward with this, and he says, when you express your needs, that is
We're looking at the Farsi, Mohsen.
You are?
Mhm.
Oh,
I mean,
sorry.
it looks like it.
Yeah, because I have Farsi open, I have English open, and I have Quran open. I have all of them open. I got to make sure I do this the right way.
As
All
long
right.
as it's roomy and you don't open something else, you don't want us to see.
I don't have anything else. Yeah, thank you. So when you express your needs, that is a flame. From prophethood's home straight to you it came. Now, so it's like you have to express what you want. You have to have a desire to actually get it. Like flashes always circling around their source. They'd head back there if they could find the force. Now, he's basically the reason he's saying this line. Just for a second, give me a little bit to explain. What if there was any sort of a sorry, let me look at this. He's talking about just flames of fire. And flames of fire, they never go away from where the source of fire is. And that's why he's saying that light flashes always circling around their source. Perhaps he could have just said flames of fire, and that would have been a better translation. They'd head back there if they could find the source. And now he's saying that if we could actually properly find the source of where we came from, we'll head back ourselves too.
Mhm.
Problem is that we really don't know our sources. I mean, we are reading about it. We are reading about where we came from, and we're reading about all of this. But at the same time, we're not quite sure. We are kind of establishing this as we're going forward. The light from the window circles around within because the sun from star to star must spin. Now, he's given us another example for a different purpose. He says, if you have a window, to your room, and the sun emerges from the east and it actually sets in the west, just, the light starts kind of turning as the sun goes around, or the earth turns. If you are associated with a star, you'll share your journey home, however far. Now, he is now kind of bringing this whole energy of the zodiacs into words. And he says, if you believe that you are, and by the way, believe me, in this day and age, there are a lot of people who actually believe in this whole zodiac signs going around and so forth. I mean, there is I just have to say this, in Telegram, which is a messaging system that Iranians use a lot these days. There is a channel that there is this woman who every day, I mean, she doesn't miss a beat. She tells you exactly where all these stars are sitting, like Mars and Venus and all that, and how they are intersecting with each other. And she has a very, very vast knowledge of the astrology. So she totally understands, the omens that come with these stars and their energies and all that stuff. Rumi is referring to that here. But there is a caveat to what Rumi refers to than what others have. I mean, it's interesting that when I was talking to some of my friends, and they're like, well, haven't you seen what Rumi says? I mean, Rumi even believes in this. And I'm like, yeah, I know, but there's a catch to what he says, and I'm gonna talk about that right now. So what he says is this: if you're associated with a star, so all of us are associated with stars no matter what, because of our birth, when we were born and all that, there was an energy that apparently got transferred into us. That's again a theory. You'll share your journey home, however far. With Venus as ascendant, what a delight, or what delight. You'll be disposed to love and want what's right. Venus, in this case, Setare Zohras, and in Farsi. So if you are associated with Venus, so basically if your emerging star is Venus in your astrology, you're always supposedly you're supposed to be a very happy, jolly guy. All right. And but if it's murderous Mars, then all we see that what you seek is war and enmity. And now I think you guys got the point that if you were somehow associated with Mars, which right now everybody is, on a mission to get there as soon as possible. So Mars is the planet which is associated with war and blood, and so he's saying that that's basically what you're gonna get.
Mohsen,
Yes.
is this a convoluted way of saying that your fate is predetermined? Because you have a star associated with you, be hell or hot water, that's your star.
So I would urge you to be patient on this.
Don't come to a conclusion that quick.
Oh, yeah.
Is Rumi superstitious? I'm sorry for lack of a better word in Farsi. He sounds
no.
khurafati.
No, he's not superstitious.
Okay.
But listen, this is an amazing book because he's brought all the myth into surface. He's talking about them. These are the myths that people believe in.
Well,
They
actually,
totally believed in it.
I mean, when I was growing up, it was very common before you did anything major of significance, somebody would go and ask somebody with knowledge, "Saat khosh kone,"
Exactly.
to
So
find the
for a
right
wedding,
time to do this specific thing.
I know. So for a wedding, they would like look up.
Yeah.
Okay, give me a
anything
good
major in
date.
your life, they would
Right.
ask guidance, and this person would say, "Yes, that's a good time," or "No, that's not a good time."
Exactly. But check out the next line. It says, "Beyond them," so this is beyond all of these stars, there's another universe where stars don't burn out nor seem ominous. He's saying all these stuff because he's trying to bring all these beliefs into the surface, that he's not saying these are not, he's not defying them, or he is not negating them, but he is freeing us from being held to these beliefs. Because we're held to these beliefs. We believe that, right now I'm completely bounded by the fact that my rising star is Mars, so I'm doomed. That's why I'm such an angry person. which he's trying to get that belief out of us. That's not why you're angry. So you see what he's trying to do? He's using people's ideologies and people's reasonings. So he says, I think that kind of answered Morvarit's question as well.
It did. Yeah.
So he's saying there's stars where stars don't burn out nor seem ominous. In other heavens, such stars still go around, not those that we can gaze at them from the ground. So he's talking about that, the fact that there is another universe, there is another dimension of this beyond what we can see. Now, remember, he's talking about the limitations that we have with our eyes. And he goes, beyond that, there is another set of stars. Bathed in the light of God, immaculate. So these are stars which are completely in the light of God. All these stars that we see, they get their light from the sun or from different suns. But those stars that he's talking about are the ones who are bathed in the light of God, immaculate, not joined together nor kept separate. So it's the fact that, you know, these stars that now he's talking about, which are a dimension beyond what we can comprehend with our senses, is like these guys are, you know, are not the ones who would be seeking war or anything like that. If for ascendant you have one of those, your soul will burn each infidel you seize. So in this case, he's like, if you so you have a choice. You can completely submit yourself to this whole astrology of, oh, today all of a sudden my rising sun and Mercury are colliding, so I'm not going out. I mean, I have people like that. I know I have people. I have seen people like that. Literally, that's what they told me. I'm like, let's meet up this weekend. It's like, well, you know, my rising sun is supposed to. This is exactly what I heard. My rising sun is colliding with Mercury. Therefore, I shouldn't go out. And I was like, okay, fine.
Mohsen,
Yes.
I have clients and friends that are from India. They're not even Muslims, whether or not they read Rumi or not. They will not do business on a certain day because it's not good timing.
Exactly. So he's talking to them. He's like, if for this ascendant you have one of, so he's like, you have a choice. You can have one of the, you know, Mars and Venus and all that as your rising suns, or you can go beyond them. If you go beyond them, your soul will burn each infidel you seize. So in this case, he's talking about anyone who questions, anyone who doubts things, you can actually burn through them. So you're not going to be stopped by these infidel or bad beliefs. It's not the rage of Mars, so don't be fooled. It doesn't change from mastery to being ruled. So he's like, this is not because of, you know, it's not because of Mars that you know, something. It's us. He's still coming back and trying to give us all the choice and all the choices that we make as far as, you know, what they are and how they are they're basically affecting us. This ruling light, which God helps keep alight by shielding it with fingers curled up tight. Now he's talking about this is the fact of the matter is that all the lights that we see and all the lights that are emerging and shining in through these stars beyond what we see comes from, he says curling two fingers, but it's basically a hadith from Imam Ali, which talks about the fact that the world is between two fingers of God. One is his attribute of beauty, and the other one is the attribute of his greatness. So everything is between his beauty and his greatness. Sifat Jamaliye and Sifat Jalaliye. So it's like this is how these manifest themselves. So overall souls, God lets his radiance fall. The lucky lift their skirt to catch it all. And he's saying that, you know, overall God is always a giving, you know, in a giving action. He's always giving us more and more of what we desire. And in this case, he's saying that as he keeps on giving to us. Those who actually know how to catch this, they'll lift their skirt and make sure that they can catch as much as possible. Appreciating their small share of light from all apart from God, they blind their sight. Now, this part is I don't like the translation, so I think that's why I kind of put a little bit of a highlight there. So he's talking about the fact that anyone who sees this or finds this would turns a blind eye to any earthly need and turns towards these stars beyond the stars. Does that make sense? So that's why they blind their sight, means that they blind their sight to anything that actually is emerging from the earth. Okay? And so that's what this line really is. Whoever lacked a skirt acquired through love could not catch any radiance from above. Now, in this case, he's emphasizing a little bit further that this skirt, that you can catch all of these goods or beauty with it, is the skirt that's made out of love. And whoever actually is able to actually make that skirt or reach it or manifest it within themselves, they can actually use that in order to get as much beauty and gifts as much as possible. Round universal being contingent turn, while roses make each nightingale heart burn. In this case, he's talking about the same thing, that anyone who they turn, anyone who actually finds this mystery and actually opens their heart, and the heart is connected to this mystery that he's talking about, which is stars beyond these stars, is they're just turned towards them, while roses make each nightingale's heart burn. The ox has on the outside colored skin. Colors in humans are found deep within. Now, he wants to give us a glimpse of what we are made of. So he wants to say that we are made of a bunch of little things. So that's why he's using the fact that there's a color that's showing from outside, which is most of the time seamless, without any any difference or variation, versus a color that's within us, which that color that's within us is what has made us who we are. However, that all different colors that are within us makes up one and emerges to become one with its source. So colors in humans are found deep within. So in order to actually find any color within people, so a color within people is also a telling sight of how connected they are or how disconnected they are. When you're actually looking at colors that are are shining and light, then that means that they are more connected souls. Whereas when you're looking at colors that are darker and black, that means that they are completely shone away from the light of God. Now, why is he bringing all these examples here? Is because he's trying to tell us that, again, this life is made up of our choices that we make as anything that we have around us emerges. And if we don't get to see what is the meaning behind everything, or the inside of what we are seeing as a front, then we can never be, we may never be able to make the right decision or make the right judgment towards anything. Bright colors from the vat of purity, and ugly ones from brooks of cruelty. So it's like when you see bright colors within people, that comes because it's something that has come from that vat of purity or from that source of purity, and any ugly one comes from any cruelty that they have basically committed. So the coloring by God is rated first. The filthiest is called what God has cursed. So he's talking about a basically two references that's used to people who are close to God versus those who are being cursed by God. And the ones that are close are the ones who have found this lightness within themselves or can see the light in each other. And of course, the ones that are cursed by God is where they have kind of neglected anything that's inside. All right. I'm sorry. All flotsam on the sea must run its course, but in the end, it goes back to its source. So we know that everything that comes from the sea goes back to the sea, and therefore we have to just take this as an example that wherever we came from, we're going to go back to it as well. Like rapid torrents in the peak above, and human souls returning through their love. So it's saying that from the peaks of mountains, these waters just keep on going down and towards the towards the sea. And just like that, that's how human souls also kind of return back to their source or to God. Okay. So he still is not finishing the story that we want on time and on subjects. He just went back again, trying to tell us what it is that gives us the emergence of our purity of soul within ourselves. How do we find it? How do we work with it? How do we free ourselves from the beliefs that are limiting? And how do we actually start looking beyond these limiting beliefs so that they can actually be more workable for us and more productive? Any questions so far? Mahdi or Mateen, you guys are very quiet.
Sorry, I have a lot of distractions here today.
That's all right.
But I think I'm following it.
Okay, very good. All right, Mahdi, any questions? Any comments?
Yeah, I'm just taking it all in and enjoying the class.
Okay.
All
All right.
comments right now.
Okay. So he's gonna thank you. So he's gonna continue on with the story of the Jewish king. So in this case, it's the Jewish king makes a fire and places an idol next to it, saying, "Whoever protests himself, prostrates. Thank you. Whoever prostrates himself before this idol will escape the fire." So my first question is, what do idols represent? In life. Say again.
Like a representation of the divine or a proxy to the divine.
In this case, the idol talking about idols that people worship, in a sense. What does that represent, do you think? Man-made stuff.
Right, something people worship or desire.
So it's worship and desire, which actually comes from outside, not from within ourselves, right? I mean, in this case, the idols are things that are man-made, right? And they are basically, people are forced to actually worship something that is man-made, and it's completely powerless in a sense to actually do anything. Another thing is about idol is that idols are without heart and soul. They don't have any heart and soul. So there is no way that you could even attach yourself to them or even find a pathway in order to be connected to them. So connecting yourself to an idol doesn't really make any sense, right? Okay. So in another thing I want to just real quick mention here is that idols are not just supposed to be things that are made like, you know, we've seen in movies that, you know, there are idols that, you know, look like a lion or look like a, you know, cow or something like that. Idols can be, I mean, your car can be an idol, you know, your job can be an idol. You know, your house can be an idol as well. I mean, anything that actually attaches you to something that is not able to reciprocate that love and that attention is basically an idol. Okay. So in this story, he's talking about this, this king who has put an idol and is telling people that you have to worship this or you have to salute this. And once you worship and salute this, that's how, you know, you're gonna basically, I'm gonna let you go, or I'm gonna let you be free. Now witness what that Jew tried to conspire. He placed an idol right beside the fire, saying, bow down before this to be free, or else you'll burn in fire eternally. Not dealing with his own self's veil abuse, an idol forms what he let it produce. So in this case, he just, you know, put an idol. Remember, this is all about defying Christianity as well. I mean, that's another thing that Rumi is, you know, kind of, you know, giving more and more meat to. And it says, but the idol really is, the problem was that the ego or the self idol that he had within himself wasn't big enough or wasn't enough for him. Now he produced something outside of it, outside of himself, to actually add to what he had within himself. So he's really branding this king as a very, very earthly and very, very evil person. And the reason he's actually, you know, putting that into this story is that we all within ourselves have an idol. Within ourselves, we all have an idol. And this idol is something that, you know, you've heard the expression that they're like, oh, his ego was so big, he could not even enter the room. That is our idol. That is our idol. That's how big we can get. Now, Rumi is saying that he got so big that, you know, he had to build something outside of himself as well. And majority of dictators do that, right? The dictators, they like a statue of themselves, right? They just love to have statues of themselves all over the place. And these are idols. These are things that actually resemble something. People are supposed to kind of majority of the time they have to bow to them and all that. The best example of modern time idol is, for instance, what happens in North Korea. You've seen probably pictures of this. I mean, there are a couple of statues of this guy's, father and grandfather, which people actually go to worship and bow down, and they take flowers to him and all that. I mean, it is literally idol worshiping in this day and age to this fullest extent. So,
And we don't even know if he's alive.
we don't even know if he's alive. That's another thing. Yeah, but that's that's besides the point. But idol worshiping is something that Rumi is basically says, if this guy is so consumed with himself, that is the part that all of a sudden is like, okay, let me build something outside of me as well, so that way I can just show everyone how big I am. And big and greatness comes from that, supposedly. Such forms the mother of all idols make. Your dragon self produces countless snakes. So again, this is how he's referring to ego as a dragon self. That is a pretty harsh statement. It says that your and by the way, it's not that this is a false translation altogether. What the Farsi line says is this, that what you have within you and what you have out is a comparison between snake and a dragon. And the snake is something that you actually are showing outside, and the dragon is what's inside of you. That is basically how he's referring to yourself as a dragon, which is pretty horrific to think about. Because your snake, even from a size perspective, doesn't even compare to a dragon. So, idols are sparks in your flint-like self sends out. Idols are sparks your flint-like self sends out. Water is what you need to put them out. So now he's saying that, again, another thing that you got to look at is that your self or your ego sends out these sparks. Now he's referring to this as idol, but idols is not the right, again, this is also a bad translation. He's referring to iron and stone. He's saying that there is a combination of iron and stone within you, which they are the ones, as they collide, they put these flares and sparks out. Okay, and you need water in order to put them out. But water can't defeat that stubborn stone. And the stubborn stone is not just the stone itself, it's the stone and the iron, and what they do, they hit each other. And the reason he's using the stone and iron is because there is a mind and there is an ego. If you don't have, so think about this. Somebody who does not have a mind, and we have people who may, through certain genetics, they may not have a fully functioning mind. So if you look at those individuals, they definitely have ego. But because the ego and the mind can't necessarily work together that well, those people are much more gentler. They're much more, if you look at their behavior, just overall, forget about the fact that, they are, a little perhaps slow or things like that. Just look at their behavior. They're not as aggressive. They're not as, demanding. They are basically, they're really gentle. So that's because there is a stone, but the iron is not there. So therefore they can't make these sparks. But most of the time, and it's interesting, in this life, we call them A-type personalities. A-type personality is somebody who's got a pretty sharp mind and a very developed self. And what that means is that these boom, boom, they keep colliding with each other, with each other, and they send out these sparks. So idols is not the right translation. Sorry. Again, this should be replaced with stones and iron. And he says, yeah, but water can't defeat that stubborn stone. So safety is what no selfish man has known. So what that really means that, whoever possesses, a stone and an iron, and is not basically can't, whoever cannot necessarily control them well, can be very dangerous and can be guided by them. That's what this line really means. So safety is what no selfish man has known. Does it make sense? Okay. Any questions for these few lines?
He mentions the stone, water can't defeat the stubborn stone. Stone being the ego.
I just basically assign stone to the ego. You can put iron to the ego. Doesn't matter. So there's iron and the stone. I think stone is referred to the ego. I'm just guessing, actually. Doesn't matter. But these two are needed in order to work together. In order to spark, you have to be able to boom, keep on putting them together, right? That's how you make fire.
And they have to be dry.
If you actually put water on it, after they dry, they still keep their nature. So they still keep on going. So if you're going to be putting water on it, it has to be a constant water. See what I'm saying? I mean, see what he's saying?
Yeah.
Okay. All right. So, but water can't defeat that stubborn stone. But at the end of the day, you have to separate them, or you have to completely isolate them, because water even can't defeat them. So safety is what no selfish man has known. Why? Because a selfish man uses this to derive his intentions. The idol is foul water in a bowl. Now, again, another example. So in a bowl, if water sits for a long time, it becomes foul, it becomes useless, it stinks and all that. So it's like, that is the idol. Again, that idol is, remember, our self. Our self, he's referring it to as something that's very stinky. The idol is foul water in a bowl. Its source is nothing but the carnal soul. So it's interesting that it says the only way that it could actually even get there is because, again, of the bad soul, or of the dirty soul, or the bad self. The idol is just like a filthy flood. The self produces it like its own blood. Now, again, this idol, this built up ego, this big ego, is just like a filthy flood. The self produces it like its own blood. A stone can break 100 cups and more, but nothing stops the fountain's relentless pour. So he's like, yeah, with a stone, you can actually, break a cup or something that's holding water. But the problem is that what's produced within ourselves by ourself, this river of bad water that keeps on coming, you can't stop it. You can't stop that. To break an idol is an easy task. To smash yourself is hard. You need to ask. So in order to break an idol, you can easily do it. But the idol within us, how do you break that? That is the one that is actually going to be difficult. That is the difficult task. To smash yourself is hard. You need to ask. To know the self's form, read what he dictates concerning hellfire and hell's 7 gates. Now, this one is, he's talking about the in the Quran. There is I think Surah Hajj, the verse 44. It's talking about the fact that to it are 7 gates. So it's referring to hell, that there are 7 gates to hell. Now, problem is that people feel that 7 gates are referred to as 7 doors. It has 7 doors, but it's the hell that it's really talking about here is the hell that we create within ourselves with our own self, which Rumi is going to, in Masnavi, is going to eventually give us this description that it's our wanting more, our desires, our jealousy, our anger, these are the 7 gates of hell, and we possess them, all of them. So we've got to be able to contain this within ourselves, in our lives.
There are also 7 gates of heaven.
That's true. And exactly the opposite. So kindness and love and all of those things are the 7 gates of heaven.
So
and,
more than one way to make it to either one.
That's true. That's very true.
And it's all on this earth, by the way, in my opinion.
Guess what? Oh,
Guess
no,
what?
they are all within you.
That's right.
They're all inside you. Yeah. But again, so remember, this self has been possessing, has been having the upper hand for so long, which Rumi is trying to get us to kind of push it aside and start working with the heart, because heart is the one that's going to start showing us what this other 7 gates are. Mm-hmm. Last time, I think Morvarid was talking about settling a case out of love. That is something that's unheard of. That's something that's generally not even encouraged. It is just the fact that finding gates within yourself and within people is just like that, trying to express and explain and again apply these things in application of your life. Mm-hmm. So again, I just want to we had a great discussion before this section, which was basically about the self and the ego and all that. And I think now you guys are getting the picture as far as how Rumi even refers to this. He's not kind to this self. He just isn't kind. He's not using any kind words towards it. So he says, each moment there is a plot. Dear travelers. So dear travelers is us. Each moment. The reason he says each moment, you guys will know it in another 200 lines, but the reason is this. I'm going to give you a glimpse into it. He says that at every moment we die and we resurrect ourselves. At every moment we are being recreated. Everything is getting recreated in every moment. So that's why he says each moment there is a plot. Because as this recreation happens, we have a choice to go towards the gates of hell or the gates of heaven. Drowning more pharaohs with their followers. Now, some people decide that they want to go towards, in this case, this is not drowning the pharaoh. It's us drowning in our pharaoh within ourselves. Again, another bad translation. It's how we get drowned in the Pharaoh that exists in us. So he says, each moment this recreation happens, and rather than emerging and freeing ourselves from it, we keep getting drowned into this Pharaoh. By the way, just as a very, very common and true statement, Rumi believes that Pharaoh and Moses are both within ourselves. And by the way, don't be surprised that in book 2, he's actually going to be extremely kind to Pharaoh. He's going to say some loving words about this guy. And the reason is that he does believe that everyone has had a chance, and everyone still has a chance to redeem themselves, because God is gracious. He does believe that. He actually also has very nice words to say about Satan. I said that as well. He's gonna show us a different picture about what we have heard biblically throughout, our lives. So this, yes.
Sorry to interrupt. What I'm always reminded that what Pharaoh did when people decided to follow Moses, he threatened to cut their right hand and their left leg. That way they would be totally useless, because if they cut the both right hand and the right leg, they could limp and go places. But with the opposite hand and opposite leg cut, they'd be just totally vegetables. That's what he threatened people to do.
Right. And again, Rumi symbolizes Pharaoh as pure self. It's our self. Because when somebody like Moses emerges and Moses is trying to show him the light, he's not willing to let go of what has made him who he think he is.
Yeah.
And again, we will get to that story. It's an interesting philosophy, and yeah, that's also something that's mentioned as far as how he threatens the sorcerers that he brings. He brings a bunch of sorcerers to challenge Moses, and some of them refuse because some of these guys knew that, and again, this is part of Masnavi. It's a story in Masnavi about this. Some of these guys kind of knew that, hey, wait a minute, this, what he does is not sorcery. He's actually doing this out of a different source and out of a different playbook. And they're like, we're not going to challenge him. And Pharaoh is like, well, if you don't do it, then I'm going to just, cut your hands and legs. And they were willing to do it. And Rumi actually makes a very nice conclusion out of that story. So to Moses and his God escape today, he's telling us, don't spill faith water. That's the Pharaoh's way. So he's basically says, Pharaoh did have a choice as well. He made his choice. You don't do what he did. It's interesting. He's looking at Pharaoh as not just somebody who just became Pharaoh. He had a choice. He could have been Moses. By the way, it's a very interesting story. You guys know that Moses grew up in Pharaoh's house. So the reality is that somebody who is a connected soul can be brought up by an evil man. And in this case, but again, look at this line, how delicate it is, because it says, don't spill faith water. That's Pharaoh's way. Pharaoh made a choice to spill it. You don't do that. You don't make his mistake. Clinch to the prophet and his God. Take pride. Your body is ignorant. Cast it aside. In this case, what he's talking about your body, what he's saying is that the needs that emerge from your body, not the soul, the needs that emerges from your body is something that is ignorant of what you want to do with your soul. So try to cast them aside. Try to actually kind of be a little, put them on hold a little bit. This is you restraining yourself. Okay. All right. I think we better stop here because
it's a good idea.
The next line. The next story is also very beautiful. I mean, it's just to give you a preview. A mother and a child come up to this idol, and the mother refuses, and that king throws the child into the fire. But by the way, this is all symbolism as far as what that fire is, and what the child says to the mother, and tells the mother that, why don't you come inside? And eventually the mother goes inside, and then all of a sudden, then this king starts talking to the fire that, wait a minute, weren't you supposed to burn everybody? Then what the hell happened here? You're not burning anyone. That dialogue is amazing as far as how Rumi starts telling us everything in this world has a consciousness, and the consciousness of every little thing. And the fire answers back, and you guys have to hear that from the words itself, inshallah, next week. Thank you, guys. Have a great night.
Thank you, everybody.
I'll
Have a
see
good
you all
evening.
next week.
Good
Stay
night.
safe, everybody.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.